Welcome to the Life You're Made For with me, Dr. Heather Penny. We're going to be having conversations to talk about us spiraling up versus spiraling down, because we all want to be living lives that are about thriving, not just surviving. This is the life you're made for. So let's get going. Hello, Susan. It's so good to have you on my show today.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, I have, for my listeners, I have Susan Salenger, and she's written the book Sidelined: How Women Manage and Mismanage Their Health. She's a researcher and an author and done some amazing stuff, because we already got to talk a couple minutes before the show started. But what I want to do is just hand it over to you, Susan. And how would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Oh, that's a good question. So I guess at first I have to say I'm a grandmother. I've got 4 grandchildren, so that I can't leave that out.
Of course not.
Excuse me, I've got a bad cough. I shouldn't leave that out. Let's see. I was in business with my husband for about 25 years. And then when I retired, which lasted 2 or 3 seconds, that was a horrible decision for me. So I went back to school and just took some anthropology classes. And one of the classes, I did a study on women who had hysterectomies. And so many of them had agreed to the surgery, even though they didn't really think they needed it. And that sort of just started my journey up with the book. Decided I wanted to write about this, because how do we as women make medical decisions? I really liked that question. And it turned out we do different things, many of which do us a disservice. So that was what I wanted to talk about.
I can't wait to get into that, because many of you know, as my listeners know, that my research for my book, and I'll hold it up for the screen for those who are watching, The Life You're Made For, it's based on research where I was really studying what the social phenomena that social researchers are beginning to call it is women spiraling down at younger and younger ages. Yes. So, of course, I wanted to be a part of that conversation on how they can start spiraling up. So I used the 3 C's: clarity, confidence, and courage, just to remind women you can spiral up, and let me equip you and empower you. So that's really my coaching. It ended up not even just being a women's issue, but becoming a humanity issue. So I work with both men and women now. But what I was excited about is because one of the biggest blocks when I'm working with women particularly is their health. And it could be anything from weight to hormones to just not feeling good, digestion. So it doesn't matter how much I'm coaching them on their clarity. Their clarity that they're getting is, I don't feel good, Heath.
Yes, right.
So I guess that's where I want to start. Tell us a little bit about what got you into this field and what you're learning about women's health.
Well, it was so interesting taking these. I took really medical anthropology classes. And as I'm sure you know, academics write for each other. So I was learning all of this good information about women's health. Yeah. And I mean, it was like a secret, it wasn't getting out there. So actually what I did is, as I said, I interviewed these hysterectomy women, and that got me going. And so I really got very interested in this decision process that as women we do or don't do. And so I interviewed about 50 women with different diseases, what I call women's diseases. I mean, I did, fibromyalgia, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, whatever. And so I found just a lot of things that women do. And just to tag on to what you're saying, one of the first things I found is that we put ourselves last when it comes to our health. Somebody a researcher did a study and gave women a list of 5 things and asked them to prioritize what they would take care of first. And of course, first we take care of our children. We take care of our pets, which, made me laugh. Third, we take care of elderly parents. Fourth, our significant others. And last, and I hope not least, was ourselves. Right. But I read studies where women who thought they were having a heart attack, this was a Canadian study, they laid in bed and didn't bother anybody because they knew their family or their husband needed his sleep. So they waited till the next morning, to go to the hospital. I mean, it's just amazing how excuse me, how many women put themselves last. Yeah. And I maintain, in terms of what you're coaching, is that it's really hard to live a well-balanced life if you don't feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. What makes, I keep thinking about that airline ad of put the mask on of your kid first, right? Right. And most moms, they're not thinking that way. They're like, I'm going to pass out before I don't put my own kids' masks on first. But in the work that I do, particularly with women, because they tend to be more of the caretakers, it's the very first thing I have to say is, when's the last time that you kind of had what I call a me retreat or time to yourself? Because that's where you're going to find your clarity. I promise you, it's living in you. You can't access it when you're running, 20 miles or 200 miles per hour. And then you're also stepping into all the caretaking. So I guess I want to talk to a little bit about that. Do you think that's a society issue that has happened with us? Or do you think that's just more prone for women?
Well, I think it's really a social cultural issue.
Yeah.
I mean, we're socialized to be the caretakers, to be the nurturers from as far back as I can remember. I mean, in my book has a chapter on medical history, which incidentally is really fun. It's not the most useful chapter in the book, but it's by far the most fun. But
the medical history one?
Yeah.
I would love to hear more about that. Okay, we're going to circle back around to that one. Keep going.
I don't know if I can do that one without notes, but I'll try. But read chapter 7. It is fun. Okay. But as far back as ancient Greece, I mean, women were subservient. I think there's one society where matriarchy is predominant, and I'm not even sure about that. But this transcends cultures. Women's subservience, women's lack of ability to take care of themselves, and financially, we have less resources. Oh, you'll like this. We know doctors know less about women's bodies. First of all, I did not know any of this. Women's diseases get less research money than men's diseases. For example, prostate cancer gets more research money than ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, and those are more fatal. But the guys get the money. Secondly, women researchers are published less often. So most of the journals, or not most, but a lot of the journals have articles by male researchers, not women. And so a lot of the stuff that women are doing is not getting published. But if you're a woman researcher researching a woman's disease, and you're going to find yourself more than likely at the bottom of the funding barrel. And what happens with that is as a result, well, even today, the clinical studies, the 6-foot white male is who everything is based on. It's getting better, but it's far from perfect. So I think that has a lot to do with it in terms of health. I kind of wandered off your question there, but
no, I love it. It was a very, very robust answer, and I appreciated what I got to hear, because I have so many more questions after that. But it made me think of this thought too of Maria Shriver is really doing a lot of attention and focus on Alzheimer's, which I didn't even realize was more predominantly women disease. And she's saying the same thing. We need to give attention to this because it's really more women who are suffering from this, and we need to start asking why and start doing something about it.
Yeah. And they don't know. Well, they don't know why with men either. to be, honest. It's a horrible and mysterious disease. But they're making some headway. They really are.
Aren't they? Yeah. I've been reading a lot about it.
Yeah, I just read an article, and it was scientific, and I can't remember without notes, but they're making some, it's slow. Don't get it is my advice.
That's serious. Don't get it. Yeah. Eat your fruits and vegetables. It keeps coming back to that.
Right. It does.
Doesn't it? Yeah. What made you move into the medical realm? You don't have an MD, right?
No. I was fascinated, but I am always been interested in medicine. Excuse me.
Sure.
I've always been interested in medicine. And when I was in these classes, I was amazed at the amount of stuff I was learning, because I thought it was pretty damn sophisticated. Well, little did I know. I didn't know that women put themselves last. Did you know that women get second opinions less often than men? I didn't know that.
No.
And as a matter of fact, we're beginning to catch up. I just read another article that said now we get more than men. But when I did my research, we don't want to question the doctor. We don't want to be rude. We're taught to play nice.
Yeah.
And that's still true. We hesitate to do it. So I learned all this stuff, and I thought, this is stuff women really need to know. This is definitely still true that we're misdiagnosed more often than men are. So,
really?
Oh my gosh, by like 20 to 30%. And if you're a woman of color, you're in the 30% category. White women have it a little more easy. That's not a good sentence, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. It's not a good sentence because we're not proud of the fact that that's what the reality is. Yes. But it sounds like that's what the reality is. And we're really looking at how to start looking at the disparity. Is the medical community starting to ask more questions and recognize this disparity there?
Yes, I think it's getting better. That doesn't mean I think it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things, the book is full of tools. There are things as women that we can do to, let me switch into that for a minute.
I was just going to ask that. Give us some recommendations that you would say.
This is really important. When you go to the doctor and you have your doctor visit, you really want to focus the visit so it goes the way you want it to. And the first thing I really recommend, seriously recommend, underscore that and put it in italics, is write out a list. Don't carry a list of your symptoms in your head. Write it out, put it in your phone, use an old-fashioned pencil. I don't care how you do it. But that list will really help you. If you're like me, you'll get so anxious that you'll forget everything you went in for. That's what happens to me.
Yeah.
And you really need to go down the list. And I was on the show with the doctor a couple of weeks ago, and she said she loves it when patients come in with a list because she looks at the list. And although they've prioritized their symptoms and what they think is the most important, she gets a chance to reprioritize it. If she for example, she was saying that one of the patients had number 6 or something. He had a mole on his back. Well, that to her was the most important symptom in the list. So she was able to look at that first and take some time with it. Guy needed a biopsy,
Wow.
So I think a list is really important. The second thing that I think is important is to ask for the clinical name of your disease. And that's because I'm a researcher. I always have them write it out because I'm a good researcher, but a terrible speller. So I have them write it out.
Sure.
And then I go home and do my research. I want to look it up. I want to make sure that maybe they're on the wrong page. We all make mistakes. And what I didn't know is that there's a lot of perceptual bias in medicine. So that the same symptoms can look like stress to a psychologist, stomach problems to a gastroenterologist. You get the point. And I want to make sure that we're on the right page. And then the third thing that I really recommend is rephrasing in your own words what you've heard the doctor say. And that gives you a chance to make sure that you understood correctly. It gives the doctor a chance to confirm or, if necessary, correct what it is that you heard. And what's so fascinating, and this statistic will blow everybody away, I hope, but only 15% of women will tell the doctor when they don't understand something. So that means 85% of us leave the doctor's office without fully understanding what's been said. So that's why I really emphasize rephrasing and making sure that that not only that you heard that you heard correctly, but sometimes whether you're a doctor or a person, we all say things we don't mean to say. So maybe the doctor didn't say it clearly. Right. And it gives a chance for everybody to kind of come back together. So, and also last, and I think also important in this, I do this too, is I try to bring somebody with me. I get anxious when I go to the doctor and I don't hear. My daughter finally said, "Mom, I got to start coming with you because you're blocking out." Yeah. So if you're like me, take somebody with you. But make a list. I want to go over it one more time. Make a list. Get the name of your disease so you can check it out, and then rephrase what you hear. Those are the really important things.
I love that, Susan. And if you don't mind, I want to add on to it, not research-based, but personal-based. Yes. But I was dealing with so much digestion issues, and I had an ND I was talking with, naturopathic doctor, and I had a DO I was talking with, and I would say build your team and make sure your team knows how to listen to you. I just said to the ND, I said, I'm in so much pain and I am in so much discomfort. I'm willing to try these things, but I need you to interface with my DO who can also give me he's a medical doctor. He can give me an antibiotic if I need it. And then I need you guys to respect each other. They were awesome, but I just stated it clearly. And I said, I'm desperate here and I don't want anybody like fighting over their side of the medicine. I need them to be on my team. And I realized, being my own advocate and saying that, first of all, I see such great physicians and naturopathic doctors, and I love them, but I had to state that clearly. And then the other thing I realized is they were willing to listen to me, all of them. So I tell women, don't put up with it if they're not willing to listen to you. It's your body, your health, right? You got it.
If they don't listen to you, either say something and hope it changes, and if it doesn't, find another doctor.
Right.
Absolutely. I won't go. I have never yet really, well, once I was told it's all in my head, or I wasn't even that, he would just dismissed me. I went in for a biopsy and I asked one question. This was years ago at UCLA of all places. And I don't remember what I asked, but it was one question out of a half hour thing. And he said, why don't you leave the driving to us? I mean, I wanted to like,
yeah, how insulting, right?
Yes.
So, and I think that's the other thing too. And my, as you talked about kind of an advocate or a buddy, my husband came in with me once and I remember he pulled aside a physician and said, we don't know what we're doing and we're willing to listen to you, but we need you to teach us and not shame us.
Good. Yeah.
Wasn't that an awesome, I mean, he just took the reins and he was advocating for me because I was dealing with actually a C-section. And to your point, oh my gosh, I'm trying to bring, birth a child and bring life into the world and my hormones are all over the place. And I can't take everything in. He not only was taking it in, but he was also willing to stand in the gap that says, change your attitude. And it was awesome. He came back in the room. He's like, okay, so completely shift the attitude. I look at my husband. I go, what'd you say to him? He goes, I just took him outside and said, listen, we need you to be on our team. And if you're going to shame us, we don't want to learn from you. But if you're willing to teach us, we're willing to learn. And I could see this shift happen in the physician's mind. And I think that's the other thing to all say is like, don't be afraid to tell them what you need in that moment, even if it's more of a social issue. You get to say that.
Yeah, I agree completely. You have to remember, and I say this over and over again, it's your body and you've only got one. You know, you can get another one.
Yes.
You really want to take care of it and make sure that you choose people that you think are helping you take care of it.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm so glad you went to the recommendation because I was going to go there, Susan. I'm like, what can you give our listeners after all this research? Give them the bottom line of what they can do.
Well, it's important. And I think, and let me just keep going on that.
Sure.
The other thing I always want to know is what made them arrive at this particular diagnosis. It's really interesting, and here's my research coming out, but there's about 20, maybe 30, even 40,000 diseases out there. Those are the ones we know about. So you can imagine how hard it can be for a doctor to make a diagnosis. Many of them have share the same symptoms. Sure, if you break a leg and you go in with pain in your leg and it turns out to be broken, I mean, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure that out. But on the other hand, if you go in and you say, I'm tired and I have no energy and I have no appetite, that can fit, oh my God, 90% of everything out there.
Yeah.
So the doctor doesn't have a whole lot to work with. Yeah. So you really want to know what makes him or her, or should I say they, I guess, what makes they, it's hard to come out, arrive at the particular diagnosis they did. And that gives you something to hang your hat on when you go home and research. And the other thing you want to ask is, what else could this possibly be? So now you have a couple of hats to hang on, so to speak.
I love that.
Yeah, I liked that too when I read it. It was not mine. I wish it was.
As you read through this, I'm a researcher too. Which ones did really hit home for you with your own personal management of health?
Well, my management of health was a little bit different from from the women I interviewed. And I don't know why. I mean, there was no reason. I'd stand up. You always know I'm in the room. I wouldn't, except for that one man who I just told you about.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm out of here. I'm just done. I'll never see him again. He was a biopsy person. I mean, the hell with him. Yeah. But generally, I would never let anybody get away with that. I really wouldn't. I had an experience years ago when I was a kid where I agreed to some exploratory surgery that I knew I didn't need. I was right. They found nothing. I didn't need it, and lived happily ever after. But I'll never go through that again. So I think, again, my health habits are, according to my own research, which I didn't know, are pretty good. But I think one of the things that really surprised me and fascinated me, frankly, and is going to be my next book, is the amount of shame women felt about becoming ill. So many women felt that their illness was due to stress, that they couldn't handle their stress. And they almost felt, and I'm taking this a step further, but I interpreted it to mean that they felt that their illness was like a public acknowledgement. Look, world, I can't manage my stress, and you can tell that because I'm sick. It was like a news bulletin.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I cannot tell you how many of the 50 women I interviewed that blamed it on stress. And I think it's so important to remember. And if you are one of those, any of you out there that think that your illness is due to stress, you have to remember how random illness is.
Mhm.
Some people get COVID and some don't. And some alcoholics get liver disease and some don't. And some cigarette smokers get lung cancer, and other people who've never smoked get lung cancer. I mean, you can't,
Mhm.
sure, I'm not saying that self-care isn't important. And sure, if you smoke, you have a greater chance of lung cancer, more than likely, than somebody who doesn't. But nevertheless, you can't take it to make the assumption that everything you get is because you didn't take enough naps or took too many naps or
Mhm.
didn't eat right or whatever your fallback position is. The default position of most of the women I met was that they were overstressed. They just had too
Interesting. Yeah, and they did something wrong that caused this
much.
health crisis instead of it just happened to be
What they
genetics or
did wrong was their
yeah.
inability to manage things, because obviously if they could have managed things,
Mhm.
they wouldn't have been sick, which is absolutely inaccurate most of
Well,
the.
yeah. Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was even as 1800s, wasn't the label hysteria an actual official diagnosis for women's health?
Yes. And I think that really the new code word for today's code word for hysteria is stress, or it's
Yeah.
all in your head,
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
some tranquilizers or antidepressants
I
and
was thinking depression too.
again
Yeah.
and again, I have to say, women do suffer from depression and anxiety more than men do. So, and if you have one of those vague diseases, autoimmune, for example, for
Mhm.
which there's not necessarily any definitive lab test, and the doctor says that they may be blowing you off, but on the other hand, they also may be right, because we do
Mhm.
suffer more from anxiety. So it's a hard call for you. It's hard for the doctor to differentiate, and it's hard for you as well. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
you don't feel good. I mean,
Right. It makes me think, man, it makes me think how much I love my doctor, to be honest. But I went in probably 6, 7 years ago, and my father just passed. So I'm emotionally grieving. Of course, I'm
yes,
depressed, right? I'm
right,
sad.
yeah,
And at the same hand, I could feel like I can't seem to pull up. Like this grief just became a catalyst for other stuff. So I'm going in and literally I can't even get through the point without crying because I feel like such a mess.
well, of
He was
course,
so kind to me, but looked at all the lab results and gave me the right tests. And I still remember his words to me. He goes, Heather, you're going to be feeling a lot better in about a month. Turns out I had no hormones like progesterone, testosterone, or estrogen.
wow,
I had a vitamin D deficiency. I had a vitamin K. I mean, these are all things, think about it, that are connected to mood
right,
imbalance,
of
right?
course,
And I thought, vitamin D deficiency. I live in California. How is that happening? Well, then he
yeah.
linked it to I have MTHFR, which is I'm not able to metabolize some things. So it was a very simple fix where he just gave me some supplements, told me how to use them. And to this day, I'm like, he wasn't wrong. Like, what was I starting to fear of? Like, I'm gonna have to go on antidepressants. I need to go see a psychologist. I can't seem to pull up over my father's grieving. Well, my father's death was just this experience that really exposed probably how much I was working so hard to keep
Yes,
everything together. And
yeah,
it gave me the permission to say, I don't think I'm doing well. But I was so afraid. It was in my head. This
yeah,
gracious doctor said, it's not in your head. It's these different things that are happening in your body. And I'm going to get you hormone cream. I'm going to get you methylfolate. I'm going to get you vitamin D. And we're going to get you on high level supplements. And you're going to feel a lot better. And love that guy that he gave me that kind of hope because I was going to a place of shame and embarrassment.
of
Mhm.
course, it's embarrassing. I agree with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Wow, love what you're love what you're sharing. I'm learning so much, just my own health journey, and the way we can keep encouraging women to stay in there and stay in the gap. And I loved what you said about bringing an advocate or bringing a buddy in.
Yes,
I
well, your
yeah,
husband,
exactly. And I think I work with so many high achievers, and I want to just say you're not blowing it that you
right,
can't retain the information.
right,
Kind of going after that shame again. I
yep,
couldn't take it all in. I remember my husband just scribbling notes down. And then when I had the 2 C-sections with the babies, he was in there trying to advocate for my health as well and making sure that he stood in the gap, both for me emotionally and physically. And I thought, wow, how would I have navigated that without him? You
Yeah.
know? And I think that's where I'm trying to tell women, you may not have a spouse like that, but you have a best friend, a buddy, somebody that you can bring in that says, will you take notes for me? Will you help me push away the shame? Will you help me get the second opinion where I need it? Right. Ask them both the physically and the emotional well-being, because you want both of them to help you navigate those tricky waters.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And really, we should switch over just for, I don't know what our time limit is here, but I want to talk about treatment for a minute.
Oh, go ahead.
Questions are really important, and women are prescribed more medication than men are.
Really?
For a bunch of reasons. But one of the things I want to say is make sure that you research any medication you're given. I'll tell you a personal story, because my husband died a couple of years ago. And so I am on an antidepressant. And I'm one of the lucky people. I'm really lucky. I have never had any pain. I've never had a bad back. I have never had anything. So I'm 80 now, and I'm beginning, it turned out to be a little arthritis. One morning I woke up and my hand I was stiff. So I thought, oh, well, this is odd, but it went on for about a month. So of course, being the hypochondriac I am, particularly after doing all this research, I decided it was bone cancer or something like that. Yeah. And my daughter said, Mom, why don't you just start with a rheumatologist? Why don't we begin at the beginning? So, okay, I go to the rheumatologist, and she said, you don't have bone cancer. You have arthritis of your hand. And let me give you, I forget what the medication was, doesn't matter. But she wrote it out for me so I could go home. Well, she gave me a prescription so I could go home and look it up. And I said, I'm on Lexapro for depression. Will there be any, interaction? And she said, absolutely not. No problem at all. But I went home and did my research. I looked it up, and she was mostly right. She was 99% right. But 1% of people that take Lexapro and this pain medication get a brain bleed, or you have a 1% better chance of getting a brain bleed. So I was so glad I saw that, because I was really able to assess the risks and the benefits. I've got a bad hand. I've also got two hands. I can always use the other one, but I've only got the one brain, and I don't want to take a chance. It wasn't worth the risk to me. So I threw out the meds, and my hand is just fine. It got better by itself. So much of this stuff is self-limiting, to tell you the truth. But I think it's really important. And then there's a second story, and I'll try to make it short, but I talk a lot, as I'm sure you've noticed. But my daughter had temporomandibular joint disorder, TMJ. What that means is the joint in your jaw it's stiff. It's funny. So when you eat, when you chew, it can be very painful. Well, at the time, Lisa was about 20, maybe. Now she was younger. What am I saying? She was 15, 16. And there were we needed to operate. The doctor said we absolutely should operate. And my husband and I both got nervous, because, when you operate on your face, there's a lot of facial nerves in there, et cetera. Yeah. So we went and got, not only did we get second opinions, we got 7 opinions, because it turned out there were 2 camps, 2 schools of thought in the TMJ community. One was, you absolutely must operate. There's no question about it. And I had one doctor say to me, if you don't let us operate on your daughter, you really need to think about your hostile feelings towards your daughter. The other camp, can you imagine? The other camp, it's always to me. My husband was on every appointment, but this was always directed to me. The second camp said, whatever you do, don't operate. And there really wasn't much. I mean, what really was black and white. And the other, whatever you do, don't operate, that doctor looked at me, those doctors looked at me and said something to the effect of, mothers that rush their children into unnecessary surgeries really need to think about, we really don't need our children to be perfect. So that's why I'm talking about second opinions. That's why I'm talking about research. And both doctors, both camps there were 3 doctors in one camp, 4 in the other. We didn't operate. And it turned out that the Teflon joint that they replaced in your jaw, I think it disfigured about 100% of the patients who had it. So thank God we didn't do it. We finally decided when Lisa was older, she could figure it out herself. We didn't want the response. But anyway, so research.
Oh, I love that. Great story. Makes me think of one more story of my own. All my health stories are starting to come up, but I had my second child. It was another C-section. And my husband had to go home and take care of the first baby. So I was left in the hospital for a little bit on my own recovery. And they woke me up somewhere around 2 a.m. to give me my Darvocet pain meds. And I was very specific saying, I don't want Darvocet. It created so much anxiety in me last time. But I'd rather have the pain than the mental anxiety. Right. And it sure enough, it was like in 5%, it may cause anxiety. Well, I was that 5%. Right. So the nurse wouldn't refuse to not give it to me. And I looked at her and I was like, I'm not going to take it. So here I am lying, trying to recover. And I'm having a battle of the wills with this nurse because she was determined to give me a pain med. I said, just give me ibuprofen. She goes, I can't. You have to take Darvocet. And I said, I will not take it. So finally, she realized I wasn't going to take it and she couldn't make me. Yeah. And I said, what do you need to do in order to change the orders? She goes, well, I need to call your OB. I said, well, call her then. She had to call the OB, wake the OB up at 2 a.m. in the morning and get her approval to say, sure, give her the ibuprofen. So that is also just a reminder. I thought, can you imagine, like, if I didn't stand my ground and say, don't give that to me, and the nurse is just following orders and she's trying to make me take a pain med where I'm choosing as the patient to endure a little bit more pain versus having the mental anxiety. But I thought that I'll never forget that story. And I thought, man, don't let someone talk you into something when you know it's not going to do well for your body. Right.
No, I think we really all have to assess the benefits and the risks for ourselves because they're personal.
Yes.
And my hand didn't hurt that badly. Somebody else may have had so much pain that they may have chosen to take the risk. You know?
And to your point, I'm with you. Like, don't mess with my brain. I'll have one painful hand. I can have a little pain with my C-section scars, but don't you dare mess with my brain because
I'm with you. My hand hurts. I mean, I'll get over or I'll compensate or whatever.
Yes.
But it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. Wow. I love everything that you're sharing, Susan. I feel like we can keep talking so long. And thank you so much. Our time went so quickly, but I think as we wrap up, I want to ask you, what do you want to leave with our listeners to encourage them?
I think the main thing I want to say is, and as I said earlier, it's your body. Remember that, please. Don't let anybody tell you what to do. And they may mean well. I'm not anti-doctor. In fact, I'm very pro-doctor. But it's my body, and I don't want to have unnecessary surgery if I don't need it. I could have done so many things to avoid it. Instead, I rushed into it. I don't want to take a medication where I feel that the risks outweigh the benefits. It's my body, it's your body, and nobody will take care of it as well as you do.
I love that. And then one of my last questions I love to ask all my guests is, what is some of your morning rituals? What do you like doing in the morning?
Oh, I'm a morning person.
Oh, me too.
I've never used an alarm clock in my life. I don't just never.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Well, I wake up about 5, sometimes 5:30. Sometimes when I do that on Sunday, I'll lie in bed till 6 or 6:30 because I refuse to get out of bed so early. I always have my breakfast. Even when I was a kid in college and I'd have like an 8 o'clock final, I'd get up at 4 a.m. to study a little bit, but I always have my breakfast. I love breakfast. So, and then 4 days a week, I exercise. I do Pilates 3 days a week and I weight lift on the 4th. I'm trying to think. And by then it's, then I shower, wash my hair, put on my makeup, all that stuff. So, by then it's already 10 o'clock. It takes me a while, even though I've been up since 5 or 5. Clean up my house because I've got OCD. So everything's immaculate or the best I can do. I get so much done in the mornings. The trouble is when you get up so early and you run around and do as much exercise as I do, my day can end by 1. I'm exhausted.
You gotta take a nap.
Exactly. But no, that's a great question. My morning habits are far better than my night habits. I go to bed early. I don't eat. My breakfast is healthy. My dinner is not always healthy,
Oh, we sound very similar. 2 peas in a pod. But I'm telling you, sometime around that 3 p.m., that's almost the witching hour for me, where I'm like, is it too early to put in my PJs?
Yes, that's exactly right. Oh, it's only 4:00.
Not yet. It's not going to go over well socially. What would be the earliest time?
Well, Jane Fonda was on a TV show or something, and she said now that she's 85 or whatever, she said goes to bed by 6:30, gets in bed at 6:30. She reads.
Love that.
So now when 6:30 comes, I give myself permission if that's what I need to do. That's still over a 12-hour day.
Exactly. I love it. I love winding down the evening. Well, Susan, such a pleasure having you on my show. Where can everybody find you if they want to have more engagement with you?
Well, the book is called Sidelined, and the new title is How Women Can Navigate a Broken Healthcare System.
Oh, I love that.
Felt that how women mismanage their health. Was too negative, was anti-women, which of course the book, as you can tell, is totally pro-women.
Right.
Oh, here's the cough coming back. So you can find me and it's Salenger is Salenger. So you can find it on Amazon or bookshop.org, any place that books are sold. Your local bookstore will have it, or if not, they can order it. It's all over. Thank goodness.
And we'll add links to our listeners. We'll add links underneath the show notes here so everybody can access the book directly, because I'm going to go out and get my copy too. I can't wait, Susan.
I hope Beth sent you a copy, didn't she? You're supposed to have a free copy.
Maybe it's still on its way. I'm not sure if we got one.
It could be.
All right, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Read the chapter on medical history.
I can't wait. Yeah. I can't wait. Thanks, Susan. Such a pleasure having you. Thank you. Everybody, we're cheering you on for your health. Keep advocating for you.
Absolutely. Everybody should. I do for sure.
Take care. Thanks for joining us. We had such a great time today. And obviously, we are all stepping into this life that we're made for. But isn't it nice to have a little bit of support along the way? If you want to find out more about the life that you're made for, come find me at heatherpenny.com. Go ahead and subscribe. Give us a review. That really helps us out and helps spread the word. You get to step into the life that you're made for. Cheering you on.